Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast and media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, LuckyEevee, and Jordan. Today is our 32nd episode, and we're discussing 1967's Gamera vs. Gyaos, so let's get things started. Now, Gamera is a very interesting kaiju character. He basically started off as kind of a knockoff of Godzilla, especially with the first movie, but then he became a very popular character in his own right, especially amongst children, because Gamera became the child-friendly equivalent to Godzilla. Now, that being said, Gamera movies were still incredibly violent, as we will see in the movie we're going to talk about today.
Oh, yeah. It may be friendly to kids, but this is far from a kid-friendly series.
It's not Frozen. Let's do it that way. Yeah, I feel like Gamera really started to find its footing with Gamera vs. Gyaos, which in my opinion is actually the best Gamera movie of the Showa era, because I feel like the movies after this would become a little bit too weird, or in some cases really tedious, because they would use a lot of stock footage of previous monster fights, like in Gamera vs. Virus and Gamera Super Monster. In both those movies, at least 50% of the runtime is just stuff we've seen before. So it makes it really quite tedious if you're trying to watch them all in order of that, because it's like, oh wait, we've seen all these fights, fast forward. At least Godzilla only really did that once in Godzilla's Revenge. But yeah, with that being said, I feel like Gamera vs. Gyaos definitely is the best of the original Gamera series of movies, at least in my opinion. So yep, the movie begins with stock footage of volcano eruptions and a news report about a big eruption and an earthquake that goes on at the same time. Now, the English dub for this movie, because there's actually two English dubs, I'm not sure which one we saw, if it was like the Hong Kong one, or if it was like the United States television one, so we're not sure, but it is a little bit stilted, which, to be fair, a lot of kaiju movies, even some Godzilla movies, had a lot of really stilted English line deliveries and dubs. They weren't done by really professional studios, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
and
no kidding.
We actually get to see that when we have the group of scientists talking about the earthquake, because one reporter talks and he sounds almost exactly like Kermit the Frog. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, kind of. He sounds like the Wilkins coffee puppet too.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like that's really the best voice you could have given to this newspaper reporter. But yeah, then we cut to the volcano erupting and people fleeing the scene, and we get to see our child character of this movie, Ichi. Pretty much all Gamera movies, with the exception of Gamera vs. Barugon. I love that. Not Baragon, Barugon with a U. It's not
Barugon.
Copyright infringement if you change a letter. But seriously, pretty much all Gamera movies, except for that one, had children as its main characters. And again, this was part of what helped Gamera be more appealing to children, to the extent where Godzilla slowly became more child-friendly as a result. But yeah, Ichi is definitely one of the better child protagonists of a Gamera movie. Probably him and Ken from the first one are the best of the Gamera child characters. The others could get kind of annoying after a while. But yeah, Ichi, he sees Gamera and he's fascinated by him, and this was the last movie where Gamera could be depicted as really a threat. After this, he would become more of a big, universe-saving hero. Again, kind of like what happened with Godzilla as well.
For the most part. At least with Godzilla, for the most part. He still, occasionally has his moments where he's like, hey, what the shit, humanity? I'm taking you down.
Yeah, exactly. But as
he just
Gamera
does what he pleases compared to Gamera, who's full on, yes.
He pretty much became like a hero, exactly. He became a giant turtle version of Ultraman, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, the credits begin as Gamera watches the lava flow of the volcano and he roars, and what's a pretty good shot, and the thing that's interesting is that definitely with Gamera, it's not as good. Again, I'm not going to compare apples to oranges throughout the entire podcast. We're going to save that for later, but it does have some pretty good miniature work in it. Not as good as some of the Godzilla movies, but definitely up there in terms of pretty good miniatures for the time being. So yeah, Gamera, it turns out, is drawn to the volcano because he's drawn to any source of heat. And then we cut to the main human drama element with the farmers being driven out of their homes to build a highway, which is actually based on something that was happening in Japan at the time. So it's basically taking from actual news events with farmers being displaced to build like roads and whatnot. So yeah, we get to see a helicopter fly over the area before it's split in half by a mysterious beam, which it looks pretty good. You can kind of see where the helicopter breaks away in the shot, but again, for the time, it's a pretty good effect considering this was 67. And yeah, we get to see that the monster isn't really Gamera, but it's actually something else. And of course, they send Okabe, a reporter, out there to investigate the matter. And then we get back to more of the roadwork foremen with. And what's interesting is there's this comedy duo. I don't think their names are ever said in the English dub. If they are, feel free to correct us with like a comment or through email or whatever. But I'm just gonna call them like Japanese Laurel and Hardy because that's basically what they are. They have very strange voices in the dub. Like the thin one is okay, but the fat one has like a real deep and gravelly voice, and it does not suit him or the antics he goes through at all. But yeah, we get to see the farmers protesting the road's construction. They keep on fighting them by sabotaging their work, which again actually did happen. It's really fascinating that stuff like that happened in real life, and they decided, oh, let's put that in our kaiju movie, which kaiju movies of the time especially really did a lot of. I mean, look at Godzilla versus Hedorah. Basically, was about the horrible pollution Japan was going through at the time.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
Does.
So yeah, the construction workers finally arrive, only to see a strange light in the mountains. Okabe finds Ichi, and he helps him get closer to the light in the mountains. And here's one thing that I actually really liked about the movie, that Okabe, you think he's going to be the main protagonist because, a newspaper reporter in a kaiju movie. They're going to be the main character. But
They're not.
Because he leaves Ichi to die in the cave-in before he's picked up by Gyaos. Now, we only see Gyaos a real close-up of her head here. But, of course, we see more of her in a couple of seconds. And, we'll start talking about her right now. She has a really unique design, I think, for a kaiju. She's basically a cross between a vampire bat and a pterodactyl. She has like these really cool razor-sharp teeth and yellow eyes. And the flat-top head, which could look a little silly, but I think it actually works with the streamlined design. It makes her look a lot more menacing compared to Barugon, who was pretty much a knockoff of Anguirus. And some of the other Gamera monsters like Zegra, the giant shark, and Girion, the giant knife dog monster. I think Gyaos is definitely the best looking foe that Gamera has had. And it seems like Dai Productions agreed because in the 90s trilogy, Gyaos would basically become what King Ghidorah is to Godzilla to Gamera. Gyaos would become Gamera's arch nemesis. So yeah, we see her basically eating the reporter, and then she slowly lifts her head from the ground before she just bursts out of the rocks and reveals her full form. And her roar is really, really good too. It's something that they repeat a lot of throughout the movie, and it just has that right amount of menacing to it. It clearly has like that feminine, screechy side to it, but it also has a really menacing tone to it that it is unearthly. It is something that again really, really serves to make Gyaos scarier.
Yeah.
So now we see.
A little bit of a note, but Gauss's head looks kind of like one of those flat-topped Kirby enemies from Kirby's Return to Dreamland. I forget what they're specifically called, but yeah.
Oh, I could very well see that. I wonder if that was an inspiration. That is
early.
Not really, but maybe the head, maybe.
You gotta show me a picture. You gotta show me a picture. I think I can tell you.
It's all good. It's all good. We'll definitely. Yep. I definitely think we can find that. Yep. So anyway, sorry, getting back to this, the little tangent, but yeah, Gamera appears to fight Gyaos. Now Gyaos basically picks up Ichi, and the two basically fight each other. And Gyaos uses her beam, which we later find out what the beam consists of. She uses it to to basically cut through Gamera's arm, which causes him to gush blood, which, again, Gamera is the more child-friendly of the kaiju, and there is a lot of blood in these movies. Like, a lot of blood in the Gamera franchise. But it's not human blood, so I guess it's okay. Yeah. But then Gamera, again, and what I liked about Gamera is they weren't afraid to get creative with how he fought the monsters, especially around this time. Because he basically gets in his shell and he does like a really cool rolling attack at her. But of course, Gyaos easily swats him away. Gamera then saves Ichi and puts him on his shell for safety, which this moment I feel is when Gamera would become, as he would famously be called in later movies, the friend of all children. Believe it or not, that was Gamera's like title later on in the Gamera franchise. But
that makes sense, yeah.
We then get to see Gamera use his flame breath at Gyaos, driving her back, which, man, kaiju suit actors were so brave, because the suit actor for Gyaos is having open flames thrown at them at this moment. But like they are like feet away from like a flamethrower, and they're on like a mascot head where they can't see anything. That is really commitment to the bit. Basically, all of the kaiju suit actors were very brave people. But yeah, Gamera then flees the scene with Ishii on top of his shell. And we get to see the workers and the villagers put aside their differences to save him, which kind of ties into what happens later on in the movie. A nice little bit of foreshadowing there. We get to see Ishii on Gamera's shell, which, again, the rear projection is really good. I know it might look a little bit obvious today, but the shot of Ichi just climbing on top of like a Gamera's shell, trying to get down, it does look really good. Again, especially for the time period, because Dai and Gamera famously did not have as large of a budget as their rivals with Godzilla. So for what it is, it still turns out really, really good. And we get to see the construction foreman ride on a Ferris wheel to get Ishii off of Gamera, after which Gamera just leaves out. And I love that Ichi, after being like almost kidnapped by Gamera and almost killed by Gyaos, the first thing he does is happily waves goodbye to Gamera, which, to be fair, pretty much all the kids did that when they saw Gamera in this franchise after this movie. Another thing that happened quite frequently in Gamera movies was little kids being treated by the authorities, and he's brought before them to talk about Gyaos. And it's here we find out a lot more about her. It turns out that the beam she emits is a supersonic beam of like pure sound that's like somehow sharp enough to cut limbs and destroy other things. She feeds on blood, which kind of ties into her being like almost a vampiric bat mixed with a pterodactyl. She has a forked tongue, and it turns out she's a bit like Tim Burton's Batman. She cannot turn her head, although this is because Gyaos has actually 2 spines in her body. And
oh dear.
Yeah. And the sketches of Gyaos, like on the thing, it definitely was made for the movie, but it is really well done to see her anatomy, that they put so much work in small details like that. And it turns out we get Gyaos, she gets her name from the sound of her roar, which, I mean, it kind of sounds like the word Gyaos, I guess, if you really, really listen. To me, it doesn't really, but I can definitely kind of see that. So yeah. We then get what is some favorite Gamera franchise with some padding of stock footage. This time it's stock footage of how a supersonic sound works by it smashing some glasses. And believe me, this is not the worst use of stock footage in a Gamera movie. If you've seen Gamera vs. Jiger, all I have to say is one word, the elephant scene. Yeah, so this is definitely not the worst use of stock footage in the Gamera franchise.
How bad was the elephant scene?
You don't want to know. I'm not even going to say on this podcast. You don't want to know. Don't watch it. Don't look up that scene because it's not fun.
You don't want to know.
Exactly. Yeah.
You already told me, so now I'm telling you. You don't want to know.
Yep, take advice from Dr. Sweet on that. Do not look up that sequence.
Okay, you've got me curious, but continue.
Yeah, all right. Let's go back to this. Yeah. So anyway, the military attempts to bomb Gyaos, but of course, Gyaos.
Yeah,
But
Gyaos.
she easily destroys the jets with her beam, which, again, you can kind of see where the jets split apart. You can see like they were deliberately, like when they were supposed to cut in half, that they just be pulled away. But again, this is probably not meant for you to notice that, and the miniature works are still really good. We then get one of the weirder sequences of the movie where, it cuts back to the scientists and the authorities wondering why it didn't work, and Ichi is still with them for some unknown reason. He wonders where Gamera is, and then it cuts to him being superimposed at the bottom of the ocean. Like, it is one of the weirdest scene transitions ever because it's literally just him sitting in front of the desk with the background of like the government facility. Then the background disappears and it's still him sitting at the desk underneath the ocean. It's like, it is one of the weirder bits of scene transitions I've seen. But it turns out what Gamera is doing is trying to heal himself underwater. And we do get to see more of Gamera later on, but it doesn't show up for quite a bit of screen time. It is, at this point, more Gyaos' movie than it is Gamera's. But we do get plenty of Gamera versusing Gyaos later on, so sure, stick around for that. So yeah, it turns out that Gyaos is doing nightly attacks in the village, which aren't shown on screen, but I feel like that actually makes it more effective because it leaves it up to your imagination just what Gyaos is doing. Like, apparently she's like devouring all their livestock and whatnot because, again, she feeds on blood. And some of the villagers consider leaving, and the construction workers all leave except for the main foreman and the comedy relief duo. So Ichi then tells the authorities that Gyaos may only come out at night because, again, Gyaos is partially based on a vampire bat, which are nocturnal, and the military, having no other options, decide to trust the words of a small boy, which is something that is kind of funny in the Gamera movies, and I think that later ones might have intentionally made fun of that aspect, and it is something that it is a little bit strange. But again, it's part of the fun of the Gamera franchise for me. So yeah, the comedy relief duo, they're basically, their job is to watch for Gyaos, and they don't take their job seriously at all because they sleep on the job, they listen to the radio, and of course, Gyaos then arrives, finally, scaring the hell out of them, and these two, and it's a shame that, again, they're not credited, or if they are, it wasn't really shown, and also that their names are never said in the dub because they really do have good comedic chemistry with each other, like their facial expressions and whatnot. It really makes you wonder if they were like a comedic team that were put into this movie for whatever reason. And they are probably some of the better human characters in this, despite them having a pretty weird dub on them.
Yeah, so anyway, despite also not really being all that important to the plot for the most part.
No, they're definitely not. But it still works out. It's like a little bit of levity for them. And it really does. It works out for the Gamera movie. Some of the later Gameras would get a little too goofy. The ending of Gamera versus Zigra, for instance, where Gamera literally plays his theme song on Zigra's body like a xylophone. It would get really ridiculous after a while. But this, I feel, Gamera vs. Gyaos pretty much does the perfect balance between comedy and straightforward kaiju antics. So yeah, speaking of which, we now get to see Gyaos. She's bombarded by tanks, but as typical with kaiju movies, it doesn't have any effect as she easily defeats them. She uses her wings to create wind, and then we get what is probably, to me, one of the better sequences of the movie, when she actually takes off to attack a nearby city. Because there's some really good miniature effects of this, of her like smashing through buildings, and for my part, the best part of the movie, at least in terms of miniature, is when she destroys the bullet train. Then she like leans over it with like her claws, and her paws basically over the train, and she's leering down at them. She picks up some people in her paw and she eats some others, which we don't really see, but the use of forced perspective in this, it does really create a good sense that you feel Gyaos' size. you feel how large she is, basically, in this sequence and how imposing she is.
And how bloodthirsty she is.
Yeah, she definitely is the most frightening monster Gamera has had to face up to this point, and probably for the rest of the franchise too, because Gamera would have bigger threats, but none of them were as violent or as like sadistic as Gyaos would be. So yeah, we then find out that she's drawn apart by light, which then leads to her trying to flee. And another really good effect, and a simple one, is when a car is driving on the highway and she cuts it directly in half with her like a supersonic beam. And we get to see the two halves of the car and the one passenger trying to catch up to the half that is with the other passengers. It's a very simple effect, and you can definitely tell that there's some real projection in this sequence, especially with the car on the highway. But it does look really good. It's really well done, especially, again, for 1967.
Oh, also another thing about that scene, it reminded me very much of that one opening scene from Toy Story 3 where, like, Andy's playing with his toys, and it's like this one scene where like Woody's trying to catch up with the escaped potato family and the three aliens, but then Buzz just comes like flying out from the sun that just like lasers the car in half. That's the precision right there.
Rex does roar like Godzilla, so they definitely took some inspiration for kaiju in that sequence. Maybe it was intentional. You never know.
Who knows?
Yep. So yeah, we finally get to have Gamera show up again as they have their second fight, and they basically take to the sky. And again, the fight sequence between them, I think it alternates from like miniatures to people in actual suits, which is actually seamless, believe it or not, because I couldn't tell on my first couple of viewings which was which. And of course, we get to see Gyaos use her beam on Gamera's shell to absolutely no effect. And then, of course, Gyaos, being desperate, basically throws Gamera in the wall and starts slamming down on him. And and again, this is a children's kaiju movie, or at least it was considered more appropriate for children than some of the Godzilla movies at the time. Gamera bites off two of Gyaos' toes. It's not really shown. It's kind of in a long shot thing, but you still see basically Gamera basically ripping his teeth into Gyaos' foot, which, yeah, really, really was not what a lot of people would expect when they think, oh, a more child-friendly kaiju movie. Yeah, I know. But seriously, though, we get to see Gyaos being driven away by the light of the sun, which causes her to retreat. The next day, her toes, which are in pretty good condition, considering Gamera pretty much gnawed them off the previous day.
It was a clean cut, let's be fair.
Yeah, it is. They're found by some fishermen, and they turn out to start shrinking in the light. Then we get another intentionally funny sequence. We see Gyaos in her cavern in the volcano, basically regrowing her own foot again when a stalagmite from the ceiling hits them, causing her to like shriek in pain and hop up and down, which I thought was pretty funny. That's a way that you can actually bring some levity to some kaijus in that, despite her despite her being so fierce and being so bloodthirsty, they still managed to have a little bit of fun with it, And of course, we get to find out that ultraviolet light is what causes her flesh to shrink, basically. And it turns out that the government comes up with a plan to lure Gyaos to a tower that's filled to the brim with fake blood and spin it around enough until the sun comes up. We get to see the villagers and the construction crew slowly starting to come with an understanding, although this temporary peace does not last long, which I think also happened in real life, but I'm not too sure about the actual details about the actual conflicts between the road construction crew and the farmers that happened in this Japanese region. But yeah, we get to see probably the silliest part of the movie to me, which it wasn't intentional, but I'm sorry, every time I see it, it is funny. Gyaos arrives at the tower and she starts drinking the artificial blood as the tower begins to spin. And the tower starts spinning faster and faster, and I'm sorry, this just looks so silly. Yeah, you can see Gyaos basically like flapping her wings up and down and screeching. It looks like I guess this would be the best comparison. The episode of Rocko's Modern Life where Filbert's bird dies, and basically they put it on a turntable and it starts spinning. That's what it reminded of to me.
Oh, yeah.
It really does start spinning around faster and faster in that, and it is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, like someone stands on it, like
Yeah.
oh god, I forget the specific scene, but like there's this
Yeah.
one movie where like someone stands on a record player and just goes super fast and just
Exactly,
flies off super dizzy.
Yeah,
That's what it reminds me of.
exactly. But no, it really, really does look funny, and we get to see the sun start to come out, and it begins to burn Gyaos. But unfortunately, before the plan could work, it turns out that It turns out that It turns out that the generator that controls the tower completely explodes, which stops the tower from spinning, and Gyaos flees. Which, in another funny sequence, which is intentionally funny, Gyaos being dizzy as hell, like she's stumbling around all over the place and whatnot, and it is funny, basically, to see her trying to get her footing in that. Of course, then we cut to more of the human drama, as we get to see the villagers are angry at the village elder because now they want to sell their homes because of Gyaos and her rampage, and which again really seems to come out of nowhere to me. How they changed? Like it turns out, like 20 minutes earlier, you were fighting to keep their homes, and then what happens is that they now they want to sell their homes. It doesn't really make sense to me. But again, it's not really the most important part. The most important part of a kaiju movie are the kaiju, which we find out the village elder comes out with a great plan to kill Gyaos. Start a forest fire, which, wow, that has not aged well. Yeah, I mean, you kill Gyaos, but yeah, you cause global warming. Way to go, buddy. And of course, the plan doesn't work anyway, as it turns out Gyaos can shoot yellow vapor from, like, I guess it's coming out of her chest. It's really hard to tell just where the yellow vapor is coming from. But she puts out the forest fire with that. But Gamera, it turns out, is drawn to the heat. So this causes Gamera to arrive once again, which leads to their third and climatic battle, which probably is the best one of the movie between them, because they definitely saved the best for last. Gamera starts a fire to startle Gyaos, and they start tackling each other. Gamera really bites into Gyaos' bat wing, which again looks painful as hell. Especially
since that's like membrane.
Yeah, exactly.
You see nerves in it.
Yeah. Excuse me. Gyaos then escapes from Gamera's grasp, and she starts striking him in the tail. And then, probably one of the more interesting ways of trying to deal with Godzilla, she picks him up and starts dropping him into the ground repeatedly. But Gamera hides himself in his shell, which apparently, I don't know if this is an intentional reference, but the Greek playwright Alysius, he died because a bird mistook his head for a rock and dropped a turtle on it, and he died. So apparently Gyaos, of course we don't know how true this is because ancient Greek, myth with reality and whatnot, but it's a funny enough story, and I think that's what Gyaos is trying to do, basically. He's trying to drop Gamera onto something to break his shell so she can kill him. And we then get a part that Gyaos prepares to use her beam, but we see Gamera's paw reaching for a boulder. He grabs it and he throws it right in her mouth, which it reminded me a lot of in Bartok the Magnificent, where the same thing happens with Ludmilla. Bartok throws a rock in Ludmilla's mouth.
Yeah, that's really honestly, that's pretty fitting.
Yeah. It really makes me want to see like a version of this where, like, remaking like the real Ludmilla, but with Gyaos and Gamera. That would be fun. Like Gyaos doing juggling and that. I can see Gyaos doing juggling, or Gamera doing juggling rather. He is very, very versatile with what he can do. I mean, the last movie he played, he knows his own theme song. He does like a gymnastic bar routine. I think it's in Gamera versus Gyrion, actually. Sadly, it is not in this movie, but that is one of the more iconic Gamera moments, shall we say. But then we get to see Gamera smashing Gyaos into the water repeatedly, and the sun slowly starts to come up, which weakens her. And that gives Gamera an idea. He starts literally dragging her up the volcano with her thrashing all the way. And the first time I saw this, I thought of it like, in Lord of the Rings, I can't carry the ring for you, Mr. Frodo, but I can carry you. He's carrying her up to Mount Doom to destroy the One Ring.
Yeah. Oh god, I just realized that. Also, I posted a Gamera freaking GIF in designated chatting, which
I will definitely check that out. Check that out.
it's the Gamera flipping
Oh, that's
thing.
nice. Yeah, that's some Gamera versus Girion. That is a classic moment, and maybe we'll talk about that. But then
Maybe.
Gamera kills Gyaos once and for all by basically tossing her to the mouth of the volcano, which kills her. We don't get to see her death on screen, probably because they didn't want to destroy the suit. More on that in about a couple minutes. But we do see her beam shooting out before fading. So we know that Gyaos, in at least the Showa era timeline, is dead and no more. The movie ends with Gamera flying away as Ichi waves to him, which pretty much is how a lot of the Gamera movies ended. And then we get ending credits, which showed scenes from all the previous Gamera movies, which is the first Gamera versus Barugon, and scenes from this. Later Gamera movies would do the same thing, but because they had a lot more scenes to show, it didn't seem as weird as doing this when you're at the third movie. But this movie was a pretty huge success for Dai. It was the most critically and commercially successful Gamera movie at the time. And Gyaos would actually appear in the next Gamera movie, Gamera vs. Girion, as Space Gyaos, which literally is just Gyaos painted silver. It literally is just the same exact prop, same exact monster suit, except they put like silver spray paint on it. And unlike
Did it do anything with the eyes at least?
Nope, same. It really is Gyaos, just with like silver paint on. And this version of Gyaos, the suit is destroyed. So Gyaos only appeared in flashbacks and archival footage after that one. And Space Gyaos in Gamera vs. Girion does not appear for very long, although her death is famously pretty violent because Girion basically cuts her into pieces, and there is a lot of blood during that sequence too, which, wow, I'm amazed they got away with that.
You know, that's fun. Okay, that actually reminds me of something.
Yeah, go ahead.
What was the episode that there was an episode we talked about kaiju on this channel, right?
Gorgo.
Our
Gorgo,
first one
was
Gorgo,
yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That makes sense.
But yeah, like I said, it's interesting to compare that to this because Gorgo took more basically inspiration from stuff like King Kong or like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and stuff like that. Yeah. Whereas this is just clearly based on like the Godzilla model of kaiju while still doing its own thing. And I'm glad that they did. You can definitely tell that this version of kaiju is the one that would become more popular, at least in like Japan, for a very long time. We would get more darker versions of kaiju, including Gamera in the Heisei series in the 90s. And we're going to talk about those movies at the podcast on a later date because Gyaos becomes Gamera's arch nemesis. She's in the first Gamera movie, and she's in the third Gamera movie of the Heisei trilogy.
She's pretty much the Ghidorah of the Gamera universe.
There's actually multiple Gyaos. They're like an entire breed of species and whatnot. And their backstory is really interesting. We'll get into more of that when we actually do Gamera Protector of the Universe and the later ones from the 90s. But that'll be very interesting when we get to it. And like I said, Gamera versus Gyaos is definitely my favorite of the Showa era Gamera movies. The first one is good, but you can tell they were really trying to rip off Godzilla in a few of the sequences. Gamera vs. Barugon is also good, but the part of the Jewel Thieves is a little bit slow, and the later ones like Gamera vs. Girion, Gamera vs. Zyger, Gamera vs. Jaeger, they're also good, but they could sometimes get a little bit too silly for my taste. I feel like Gamera vs. Gyaos is the first time when the franchise really knew what it was doing. It's like, this was, I feel, the perfect encapsulation of what Gamera was, and it's a shame that the rest of them couldn't end like this, especially Gamera Super Monster, which literally 90% of it is a clip show, and that was the last Gamera movie made in 1980, and it really is tedious to get to. I do not recommend it. Gamera himself is the movies are public domain, although they're not. Gamera himself isn't. The American dubs of the movies are public domain, so they're easy to come across on YouTube, and I'd recommend them. They are a lot of fun for what they are. Again, they're not as quality as like say the original Godzilla or stuff like that, or like Godzilla Raids Again, but they are a really good time for what you're looking for. Which now leads into one thing before the question of the week. My apologies. We are doing this episode because of the anime coming on to Netflix very soon, Gamera Rebirth, and Gyaos is going to appear as one of Gamera's enemies in that. So it'll be a lot of fun, and we're definitely going to talk about that as well at a later time. Now we get to the question of the week, which is going to be a little bit of a different one. Okay, who do you like better? Gamera or Godzilla?
Godzilla. I grew up with the giant foot-tall dinosaur or lizard they had back in the description of Godzilla, so I say Godzilla for me. I can't turn down the big guy.
Same here, honestly.
I
mostly grew up with Godzilla, not gonna lie. Like, I knew of the only time I actually knew of Gamera was like in high school or middle school when me and my family were like into MST3K a little bit. Still kind of am. But yeah, Godzilla for me does it a lot more, especially with the MonsterVerse design. That is peak Godzilla. Change my mind, you can't. It is peak Godzilla design again, because just how it looks makes him feel very like unique, like compared to the others. Like the others make him look rounded and whatnot, and for the most part, I'm for that. But like when he actually looks like a freaking reptile, a freaking ancient dinosaur being from like the past, like the ancient past even. But,
yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. How about Shin Godzilla? What'd you think of that one?
I have yet to see that one.
I have not seen that. I've seen the transformation of how Shin Godzilla goes and up to becomes, and how it ended. I'm like, creepy as hell that it looks, and then gets to the full front of what it looks like, and the tail scene. I'm like, it's just even more creepy as fuck. I love it. I want to watch it.
Yeah, I want to see it too. If not for the fact that this is the hottest, I repeat, the hottest base Godzilla's flames have ever gotten, to the point where they cut freaking buildings like lightsabers to butter. That is not just hyperbole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I've seen that, and like I say, I would have to say as well, I have to agree with you that Godzilla really is the original kaiju. He's not the first kaiju, but he might be, after King Kong, the most influential kaiju. I mean, Gamera himself wouldn't exist without Godzilla. Most kaiju,
also, unless
wouldn't exist without Godzilla. And also, I would say something that interesting is leading up to the release of Gamera versus Jiger in Japan, because it was the 1970 World Expo in Japan. What's interesting is that they actually did, Dai and Toho got together to do a Gamera versus Godzilla poll of children. It turns out it was a tie. So that shows how, I guess that shows how popular Gamera was in the 70s, that, a poll of, like Japanese school children had him pretty much even level with Godzilla in terms of popularity.
Yeah, but nowadays though, unless Gamera actually does something like pretty damn unique, both design wise and like with the overall series, I'm absolutely gonna stick with Godzilla, hands down.
Same. I definitely have to agree with you. And LuckyEevee, what would you have to say?
Yeah,
I will say, didn't realize again was his own thing. I thought he was a Godzilla kaiju.
Huh. I can definitely see why, because Godzilla has fought a lot of weird-looking monsters in the past, especially around this time. So,
absolutely.
Unfortunately, we did never get a Gamera versus Godzilla movie, and due to copyright issues, we probably never will.
We did get close with Godzilla versus Gamera on Death Battle, but that is the closest we will ever get to that.
We're never really getting an official one, because just making Godzilla versus King Kong was hard enough, apparently in the 60s. Trying to do it with a rival Japanese studio, it would not work,
I
unfortunately.
mean, nowadays, King Kong and Godzilla versus Kong versus Godzilla absolutely would be possible because they're in the same universe.
Oh no, with the
Mhm.
MonsterVerse, yeah, but I'm saying the 1960s version of Godzilla versus King Kong famously went through a lot of troubled production. Apparently, Marion Cooper, the creator of King Kong, was absolutely against it from the start. He also directed, of course, the original one. But we'll talk more about that at a later time. And yeah, I definitely have to agree that Godzilla is superior to Gamera, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's not saying Gamera doesn't have his moments. I feel like
Absolutely.
Gamera is, if you want to have a lot of fun with a kaiju movie, that's the one that you really want to pick sometimes. Some of the
Yeah.
Godzilla ones can be a little heavy. Granted, some of the later ones like Godzilla's Revenge, Godzilla versus Megalon, Godzilla versus Biollante, and that definitely
Biollante,
has...
yeah.
Yeah, Biollante, thank you. But they definitely have their moments in that. But I feel like Gamera is definitely one where if you just want to like relax on the couch and watch something that is very light and fun kaiju action, that's where I would recommend it. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
yep, now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness Scale, where we will rank Gyaos today. This is an interesting one because Gyaos is very unique with the design, with the characterization, with how bloodthirsty and fierce she is, and yet at the same time, I don't know. I do like her quite a bit, but there's something that holds me back from giving her a score higher than I would say. Maybe at the best, I'm going to give her an 8 out of 10. I would give her a higher score, except again, I just don't know. There's something about her design or something about that I think draws it back a little bit. I feel like if she had a little more screen time, not to saying that she doesn't have as much screen time as she does already, but I feel like maybe the Heisei trilogy gave her a little more characterization. She feels more like a monster compared to a character like Gamera, for instance. She feels a little bit more like an obstacle. If they gave her a little bit more of... But again, she does have character in that we see how fierce and bloodthirsty and, heartless she basically is. But at the same time, she is kind of a monster, and I do have to give her that score. I do like her quite a bit, though. I like the design. I like the Vulcan design. I like, again, the characterization that she does get is very good. And I really would love to give her a higher score, but 8 out of 10 is really as high as I can go for Gyaos. So, Angron, what would you have to say?
I'm gonna have to agree, but I will admit, she kind of gets a little higher of a score in my opinion. Like, in actuality, I'm actually gonna stick with 8 out of 10 too. The whole 60s like somewhat cheap costume look is charming, but it can only go so far, in my opinion. It's far from terrible. And in fact, I like this design. It looks sleek. It looks menacing. It very much looks like something that absolutely I would be down for because I like sleek reptiles. They're pretty cool. They're pretty neat. But yeah, again, this is something that came out in the 60s and whatnot. And the fact that some things about Gamera haven't really aged well, yeah, you know what? I'm actually gonna say 9 out of 10 because like
Wow.
I'm not the biggest Gamera fan for obvious reasons, but yeah, if monsters like Gyaos are what childhood me would have ultimately been into like at the time, then yeah, I definitely would have like been on board the moment you showed me this movie. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna say keep it at a 9 out of 10 because I like Gyaos' design, the concept's cool, and just overall, I'm just kind of a fan of Gyaos to be perfectly honest. It's cool.
No. She is very, very cool. I definitely agree
Hell
with you,
yeah.
especially for kids, because again, some of the later Gamera kaiju would start to look a little silly. I feel like Gyaos definitely balances menacing and still not being as outright terrifying as, like, say, King Ghidorah,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah, it's a
I feel,
balance that I'm
especially
down
for the '60s, you're really right. Especially again with a children audience, well, not an entire children audience, but you get my point. You may have convinced me. I may change my score to 9 too. Wow, I did not think about that before, but you are very right in that Gyaos definitely looks unique in that regard. So yeah, I'm changing my score to 9 out of 10 too. Jordan, what would you have to say?
I didn't get a chance to watch all the Gamma, and I'm looking at the photo we have on our group page of Gyaos. It looks like it's the same picture, like design of her design. I mean, sure, the 1995 picture has her nails more dark and red, but the others look. I like her design. I'll give her 8 out of 10 because again, I don't know a whole lot of. I mean, when you gave the description of what she is, I'm like, okay, she sounds interesting. I feel bad that I don't know what she fully looks like. I may have to watch the old version to get no idea about her.
I know what picture you're talking about.
But
Nice.
It's all good.
But I gotta say, I'm gonna say 8 out of 10 because I don't know a lot about that universe, this kaiju a lot. So I might have to watch it and maybe understand more about her. So I'm gonna give her an 8 out of 10.
I definitely can see that. You know, that makes a lot of sense, especially just from aesthetics alone. You know, that really that's a good reason. So LuckyEevee,
I guess 5 out of 10.
any particular reason?
And the design is just kind of that.
Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from with that, especially for like if you're not into the whole '60s aesthetic. I can kind of see why it wouldn't do that much for you. I've heard that again. I haven't really seen the Heisei trilogy, so I can't really say about her appearance in Gamera and Gamera 3 of that one. But I've heard that she does look a lot better, and again, there's a lot more Gyaos in that movie because there's an entire herd of her. So we'll find out when we do that episode eventually. But if you have any questions, or if you want to send us your impressions of Gyaos' roar, you can email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com or visit us on Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Next time, we'll be talking about the 2007 movie Shrek the Third. We're going to skip Shrek 2 for reasons we will get to when we do that episode. But yeah, that'll be a lot of fun to talk about that movie, talk about more about DreamWorks in general. And until next time, take care.
One thing really quick. What
go
sound
ahead.
did they use? What sound did they use for Gyaos' roar?
I think it was actually somebody doing a kaiju roar. It sounds like a human being, though I'm not exactly certain. And something that I'll definitely have to look up. But yeah, you can also email us about that too. If you can find out what what Gyaos' roar really is, feel free to email about that too. And until next time, take care.
Laters.
Bye.
Adios.